Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn. Welcome to today's video, which is going to be another crochet vlog. This one is going to be completely dedicated to a custom order that I recently received. This is actually the same customer who ordered this scrappy cardigan from me, which was really fun to make for her. And I was really interested in taking on this order as well because she requested a cardigan made following a specific pattern. And even though it's not a pattern that I have followed before, I think it looks really cute. The pattern looks to be well made, and I was really excited to do this for this customer. What is also unique about this order is that she sent me the yarn that she wanted me to use for the cardigan. They are the Karen brand anniversary cakes, like special edition jumbo cakes of yarn, which I also haven't worked with before, but I'm glad that she is familiar with them. She likes how they look. I'm assuming since she owns so many of them, she likes how they feel and work up and everything. And I'm just really excited to see them in cardigan form. Not sure if I already mentioned it, but the pattern that I will be following for this cardigan is called the Luna Cardigan. I will have it linked down below. It is a paid pattern and it's this really cute, like patchwork looking cardigan. I have made one other patchwork cardigan in the past. This is how that turned out and I was absolutely obsessed with it. The way I made this one was by making individual squares and sewing them all together. This pattern I was excited to see actually has you make the squares in strips. So it does require you to plan out all of your different colors before starting the cardigan, but it does cut down on the amount of time that it would normally take you for a patchwork cardigan to sew all the squares together, because you basically just sew the strips together and then all of the sewing or attaching you have to do is along those column lines. Not sure if that makes sense. Like I said, I will have the pattern linked down below so you can take a look into it if you are interested. But I'm really excited to get started on this cardigan for my customer Kendall. Now, when she sent me the yarn, she sent me 2 anniversary cakes, basically just to make sure that I have enough yarn to finish the whole cardigan, especially because she wants a bit more of an oversized look for this one. And when I was looking at these cakes, I was curious to figure out how these were going to work up into this patchwork style cardigan that she's looking for, because hopefully I can get this to show up the right way. It is a variegated yarn and there's quite a few different colors in here. There's this teal color, there's purple and blue, and then there's also more of a vibrant pink color, but they're kind of randomly dispersed. Also, this is the colorway Jules and Jolly, in case you were curious. It is a 6-weight super bulky yarn, 100% acrylic. And I wanted to do a couple of test squares using this yarn to see how the variegation worked up for the size squares that I need for this cardigan. So I did some sample squares and sent these pictures to Kendall to get her opinion on them. Basically, I did 1 square all by itself, took a picture of that. I did 2 squares connected as the pattern suggests to do. And for this, I ended up alternating the skeins of yarn because, like, the one I just showed you had only a little bit of pink that you could see, but this skein of yarn has a lot more pink showing. I'm guessing it all evens out throughout the entire cake, but that told me that if I start from different places in the cakes, or if I start each cake, like, I would get different colors. So I thought it probably makes sense to alternate pulling from the 2 cakes of yarn so that I would get a little bit more contrast between the 2 squares in the patchwork design, rather than if I just kept using 1 skein, it would show up more as just like a variegated column of stitches and less like the patchwork squares that she's wanting. So anyway, I alternated between the 2 skeins for the 2 squares, and then I alternated back to the first one for a 3rd square, and I sent her all of those pictures, like I said, to get her thoughts. So then she asked if it would be possible to outline the squares in black to give a little bit more contrast and basically better define how the squares show up in the cardigan. And so I did one more little swatch for her. It's a little bit messy because I'm pulling from different skeins and I didn't want to cut off yarn that I will frog and use again later. But just to give her a view of what it would look like, I did make 2 squares with the same alternating again between the 2 skeins of yarn, but then having some lines of single crochet in black yarn separating them. Again, this is not like how it will actually look, but just to give her the vision, and she does like this. So I am going to go ahead and pursue making the rest of this cardigan with these black outlines. My plan for that is basically to follow the pattern and make these columns of squares. I am going to alternate the cakes, like I said, so that I can get some variation in the colors within each square. And what I'm doing doing is just adding a row of single crochet in black yarn between the two squares. This is not part of the pattern. This is where I'm deviating from the pattern, but I will basically do that for each column. And then when I attach the columns of squares together, I'm going to use the black yarn to connect them. So that's going to give this side kind of definition of the squares in the black yarn that I think will make the customer happy. So that is the plan. I am going to frog probably all of this, to be honest, now that I have a clear plan for finishing this cardigan. I'm going to clean up my yarn that I'm working with and everything. And then I also, for this sample to show her, I just doubled up a thinner weight black yarn. But for the real cardigan, I decided to go ahead and pick up some bulkier black yarn so that it would actually match the weight of the cakes that she sent me. So this is what I will be using for the black. It is Loops and Threads Charisma acrylic. In the color black, it says it's a bulky 5-weight yarn, but I will say that the thickness feels and looks very similar to the 6-weight super bulky anniversary cakes of yarn. So I think this will match perfectly. So that's the overall plan. At this point, I'm just going to go for it. I will check in probably once I have a few of the columns finished so that I can show you what I even mean by columns, but then I can hold them up next to each other, show you the vision before I get it all attached and put together. Because this is bulkier weight yarn that I'm used to using, I think this should actually work up pretty quickly. I'll let you know if that's the case when I do my next check-in, but yeah, just really excited to get into this one, get some more progress pictures sent to the customer to make sure she's liking how it's coming along, and then yeah, have another cardigan pattern under my belt. I think it's gonna be great. So I'm gonna get to crocheting and I'll be back with my next update when I have it. Okay, my friends, it is time for a hefty update. As you can see behind me, I do have a lot of progress to share on the cardigan, but I have not come on with any video updates. But I did take pictures and I do want to talk about the different steps that I've gone through in making the cardigan so far. So the first thing I did, I think I already talked to you about, is I made long strips of the panels made up of individual squares for this cardigan. So I ended up making 4 long panels of 6 squares each, and then I just made one panel for the middle that has 3 squares on it. In between each of the colored squares, I did do a row of single crochets with the black yarn as I agreed with the customer. And I did follow through with the alternating of the anniversary cakes that I was using for each square. Now, for the most part, I like how this turned out. I do think I got enough variation between the squares to still give it that patchwork look, especially because of that black yarn in between the squares, thanks to the customer's suggestion. But it's funny how it worked out. Sometimes the colors were really different between the 2 anniversary cakes, and sometimes they actually ended up kind of looking similar right next to each other. And I feel like that's the type of thing that is going to happen using variegated yarn. Sometimes it works out in your favor, sometimes it doesn't, but you can't really control it, and that's the whole kind of point of using variegated yarn. I could have been really meticulous and like pulled out yarn if it was too similar to get to the next color that was different. I just feel like that would have created a lot of waste, and again, kind of defeats the purpose of using a variegated yarn like this and letting it just do the color changes for me and seeing how it turned out and letting that be part of the beauty of the cardigan. Obviously, if somebody wanted a very specific pattern and arrangement of color blocking, like you would just use solid color yarn. So that's that. I really like how the panels turned out. And then as I was arranging them, I did put them in different locations and kind of turn some of them around in order to get the look that I felt was the best for the overall cardigan. And then I did seam up each of the long strips or panels. And I tried a couple different methods for this because I did want the black yarn to show, obviously, so I didn't want to do an invisible stitch to join the panels. That is what's recommended in the pattern, and that makes sense. Again, if you're doing that color blocking thing, you don't really want the seams to show, but in this case, we decided to make it a feature. And the first thing I did was just hold the panels together and do a single crochet across. But then when I opened it up, it was making that seem a little bit too 3D for my personal preference, because on the long panels between the squares, like the single crochet rows were just the same. They were flush with the rest of the stitches. So I didn't want the vertical lines to be that different looking. So then I tried holding the panels together and just doing a slip stitch to connect them. I thought that might make it a little bit thinner, but I wasn't liking how that looked either. So then finally I landed on basically having the 2 panels in front of me, and then I would slip stitch into one of the sides and then I would slip stitch into the other side. So it kind of made a little bit of a zigzag looking line, but it ended up being flat, which is what I wanted, and I think it looks great all put together. It looks really similar to the single crochet rows with like the thickness of the row and everything. And because I did it alternating like that, I guess it took, you know, double the yarn as it would have taken to just slip stitch across both panels. You know, instead of one slip stitch connecting 2 sides, I would do one slip stitch on each side. I don't know if that makes sense, but it worked for me. I really like how it looks. I'm glad I took that time for experimentation, and basically I got the whole body of the cardigan put together. So let's see if I can get you to see it. This is how one side of the body looks. This is how the other front side of the body looks. I tried to get a little bit of the pink, a little bit of purple, and a little bit of the green kind of showing on both sides of the front. And then this is what the back whole panel is looking like right now. I cared a little bit less about how the back looks. I mean, obviously I want it to look good. It's part of the cardigan, but you're going to be looking at the back a little bit less than you will be looking at the front. So I focused on what would make the front look the best. And now what is left is the sleeves. So this part of the body is quite wide. So this will definitely, when she's wearing it, you know, will start on the sleeve. And then I did have her measure the length of her arm from her shoulder where it meets her neck all the way down to her wrist, so that I can make sure to make a sleeve that will fit her. So I'm going to take that measurement. I'm going to subtract the width of this because that will cover, you know, this whole area, go over her shoulder, and then all I need to do is make a sleeve that will go basically from my elbow to the wrist, again using the measurement that she sent me so that it actually fits her. But it should not be that much extra length here, and the way the pattern has me do it is first make the cuff, and I think I'm going to do that in black, and then it says how to do the sleeve, but you basically just do it in one round panel and then obviously connect it here. I do need to seam up the sides with the black yarn, obviously connecting the sleeve, and then I need to do ribbing around the entire front of the cardigan and the bottom, and I will be doing all of that in black as well. So it feels like I am getting pretty close on this. I do sometimes underestimate how long sleeves and finishing off of a cardigan takes, especially in this case because I will be doing full ribbing all the way around. Like the ribbing will go around the collar, around the front, and around the bottom, so that will take a pretty long time. But yeah, those are the final couple of steps that I need to take before finishing off this cardigan. I think it's looking awesome. I've been sending the customer progress pictures along the way and she seems happy with it so far, so I'm excited to finish it up and get her some finished photos. So I think I'm gonna do that. I will be back when this entire thing is finished. I will try it on to show you how it looks, give you any final information about how I, you know, continued to modify the pattern and everything like that. And I think it's gonna be great. So see you in a bit. All right, my friends, I have finished the cardigan. I'm obviously wearing it. I'm going to do my best to step back and get it all in frame, give you the full vibe of the cardigan, but I'm so happy with how it turned out. This is borderline the comfiest cardigan that I've made to date. I don't know, I've made some really comfy cardigans, but this Anniversary Cakes yarn is quite soft, and because it's so bulky, it also makes it extra just like plush and cozy feeling. So I'm so excited with how it turned out. Okay, here comes the reveal. The sleeves are pretty long, but the pattern did recommend that in order to give it that kind of baggy, slouchy look. But I think the square pattern looks so good. I think the black lines look really good. I obviously did the black for the cuffs as well as the ribbing all the way around the collar and the bottom. And here's the other side. I think it looks nice and cohesive, but again, the squares are different enough from each other to still give off that patchwork vibe for the most part. Here's another look at this sleeve and then the back. I just think it turned out so nice, and I'm so excited that I now have this pattern in my collection. Let me sit down to talk to you a little bit more about my experience with the pattern. First of all, I think the way that the pattern lays out the structure of this cardigan is great. Doing these squares in vertical strips makes so much sense and saves on so much time compared to the one patchwork cardigan that I had made before that I did make out of individual squares. It was so nice to just have what, 5 long strips to sew together, but even that I did with more of a slip stitch sort of thing, so it wasn't even sewing, and I liked that so much better. I don't think the pattern called out to do that. I do think the pattern said to use like a mattress stitch or some sort of invisible stitch, but if you don't mind seeing the seams, or if you can hide that like on the back side or something, I definitely recommend either doing a single crochet or a series of slip stitches to connect the 2 panels of the cardigans because it saves so much time. And then I made the sleeves pretty much exactly how it said to do it. So you start with the cuff and then work up the length of the sleeve and then connect it to the rest of your cardigan, and that went super well. The sleeves worked up really quickly despite how baggy and large the sleeves actually are, and I did use the number of stitches that the pattern said and everything like that. And then the ribbing as well, I did the number of stitches that it said to do for this ribbing, and I think it looks really nice. So comfy and cozy. So overall, I had a good experience with the pattern. Obviously, I didn't stick to it 100%, but I really appreciated having it as like a base pattern to reference. And then I just modified what my customer wanted and what worked for me with the look she was looking for. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I will be taking a couple more pictures of it. I will send them to the customer just to make fully sure that she is 100% happy with it. And then I'll be shipping this off to her, as well as the leftover yarn that I have, because I do have quite a lot of leftover yarn. I'm not even sure if this used half of each anniversary cake. Like, it's possible that I could have made this all out of just one anniversary cake, which is pretty wild. I did check with the customer also before doing this. I can't remember if I mentioned, but I told her how pulling from the 2 different cakes would definitely end up with more leftover yarn in each of them. So if she wanted to cut down on the yarn waste, or like the partial cakes that she will now have in her possession, then I would have been fine just using one. I just would have gotten less variation between the squares. It would have all just kind of fed into each other, which could also be an absolute vibe. I think that would also look great. It would probably turn out looking pretty similar to this overall, but this is the direction we went with. So I will be sending the 2 half cakes back to her at the same time of shipping her the cardigan, and I just really hope that she's happy with it. I hope it fits her exactly as she's expecting. I would totally make another cardigan like this because I do think the time it took me to make this was worth it with like my pricing and everything. I didn't time myself the whole time, which is one thing I would probably do next time now that I've gone through the pattern at least once. So I've gotten that learning curve a little bit more taken care of. So the next time I do it will be a little bit faster and a little bit more true to time that I could charge for something like this. So we'll see if I get the opportunity to do that in the future, but I'm just so happy, honored, excited to be getting custom orders like this, and excited for what will be coming in the future. I'm gonna put it out there that my link tree is always in the description box of my videos, and through that is where you can get to the custom order inquiry form. You don't have to put any money down or anything. It just is a form to tell me what you're looking for, and then I get back to you with a quote and we go back and forth discussing your custom order. If you don't need anything fully custom, I do also always have my Etsy shop linked down below as well. So if you're looking for a cardigan that I've already made that I could quickly and easily reproduce, those prices are obviously already set. So just making that little plug in case you're interested. But I'm having so much fun experimenting with cardigans and hopefully getting better with every one. So yeah, all right. I think that is all that I have for this video. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.